Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
You saw, of course, but former First Lady Barbara Bush passed away yesterday at the age of 92. She was suffering from congestive heart failure and COPD and had recently decided to end her treatment. Still, the night before her death, her loved ones said she was answering all of her own calls and drinking bourbon. Yeah, true story. Barbara is survived by her husband of 73 years. 73 years they were together. President George H.W. Bush, plus 5 children, 17 grandchildren, 7 great-grandchildren, and a brother. In addition to being First Lady from 89 to 93, she was also the mother of President George W. Bush, who served from 2001 to 2009, as you know. Her son Jeb Bush was governor of Florida and a presidential candidate in 2016. Did you ever hear her talk about what it was like to be the mom of a president? It's kind of neat. You ever catch this, Travis?
No, actually, I didn't, and I was curious if she ever discussed it.
Yeah, Barbara Bush told Larry King what it's like to be the mom of a president. Have a listen.
It's worrisome because you worry about the responsibilities. Having said that, it's not very much different from the other children. We were in Washington, and it really touched me. The president came out and met me at the door. I would feel the same way if Doro stopped work or Marvin stopped work and came out of the building. I really loved it. That's
sweet. It's really nice. I remember once that she was tough. She took no grief from anyone. And you know what? The Bushes are such an intrinsically Texan thing, and they're such an intrinsically Houston, Texas thing, that a lot of people don't know this. You know where she was born?
I know it wasn't Texas. I'm trying to think. Wasn't he born in Connecticut? Was she also born in Connecticut?
No, she was born in Queens, New York.
No kidding.
She was born in She was born in Queens. A lot of people sort of associated that with why she was a little tart and tough and took no guff. Yeah. Anyways, she, like I said, is survived by her husband of 73 years, 5 children, 17 grandchildren, 7 great-grandchildren, and a brother. In addition to being First Lady from 89 to 93, mother of President George W. Bush, her son Jeb Bush, governor of Florida, as we said. She was also Second Lady when her husband was Ronald Reagan's vice president from 1981 to 1989. Over the course of her husband's political career, Barbara championed a whole bunch of charitable causes. And this was one that I thought was really... I remember hearing about this. And look, if there's one part of me that has a knee-jerk reaction when you're looking for a solution to something, it's always going to... I'm always going to default to, you know what will solve this? Education and literacy. And her most prominent work was in the world of literacy, which included founding the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy. She also wrote a few books, including a memoir and Millie's book, a behind-the-scenes look at the Bush White House from the perspective of the first dog. Do you remember this?
I don't. I don't, actually.
You might have been there as well. If you go out to West Houston, sort of like, I guess around I-10 in the Beltway area, there's the Millie Bush Dog Park. It's I think the Barbara and Millie Bush Dog Park. And it's a great dog park. Yeah, it's really cool. George W. Bush issued a statement saying, quote, "Laura, Barbara, Jenna, and I are sad, but our souls are settled because we know hers was." Isn't that a beautiful and erudite statement? Like, George W. Bush was a guy who got a lot of grief and caught a lot of flack for, strategery and words such as that, words like that.
Fool me once.
But here's the thing. But people I know that have been around him in Houston say, you put him on camera, the guy's a buffoon. But you put him in a room full of people and he lights it up. And he is the most charming, erudite, well-spoken individual ever. He just goes a little bit mealy-mouthed when you put a camera with a red light on in front of him. But Barbara Bush was a fabulous first lady and a woman unlike any other who brought levity, love, and literacy to millions. To us, she was so much more. Mom kept us on our toes and kept us laughing until the very end. I'm a lucky man that Barbara Bush was my mother. Our family will miss her dearly, and we thank you for all your prayers and good wishes. Even though President Trump was pretty merciless to her son, Jeb, during the 2016 campaign, the White House issued a statement saying, quote, Barbara will be long remembered for her strong devotion to country and family, both of which she served unfailingly well. The President and First Lady's thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of Mrs. Bush. There was an error in the official White House statement, though, which was a bit of a whoops. And we'll get into what that was in just a second. Plus, a Barbara Bush quote that I discovered that I've decided I should probably start trying to live a little bit more like this.
Let's start the show.
Real radio.
104.1. Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So a lot of people have been paying tribute to Barbara Bush, who has passed away at the age of 92. Bill and Hillary Clinton paid tribute, saying she was a remarkable woman. She had grit and grace, brains and beauty. She was fierce and feisty in support of her family and friends, her country, and her causes. She showed us what an honest, vibrant, full life looks like. The Obamas said, we'll always be grateful to Mrs. Bush for the generosity she showed to us throughout our time in the White House, but we're even more grateful for the way she lived her life, a testament to the fact that public service is an important and noble calling, and an example of the humility and decency that reflects the very best of the American spirit. She'll be remembered for passing these values on to her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, and to the countless citizens whom she and George inspired to become points of light in service to others. There you go. There was an oops. President Trump's tribute to Barbara Bush, which was very nice, actually, got the year of her death wrong in the official statement, though. I just couldn't cross a finish line. And then Donald Trump deleted the tweet, and then because you're limited to the number of characters on Twitter, right?
Right.
So what people often do is they tweet a picture of their official statement, so you can read the whole thing. You're not limited. And it was dated April 17th, 2017. So,
oh my God, he tried hard.
The sad thing is, that's not a Covfefe situation. That's not classic Trump tweet misspelling. That's somebody clearly prepared the statement, and because it says for immediate release. I know he writes a lot of his own stuff, but he didn't do the press release. And the people responsible for it, from the office of the press secretary. The press secretary got it wrong. So then he retweeted it, but had cropped out the date.
Oh my God. That's so funny.
So close. I believe that is, what would we call that? I believe we would call that fumbling at the one. You almost had it, but butterfingers. Too bad. So sad. I'm sorry. Here's the thing that I was going back through, as you do in these situations, going back through some of the things that Barbara Bush had said and done. And I came across something she said at a college commencement that made me go, I need to maybe readdress how I'm looking at life. She said at the end of a college commencement back in 1990, at the end of your life, you will never regret not having passed one more test, not winning one more verdict, or not having closed one more deal. You will regret time not spent with a husband, a friend, a child, or a parent. And I was like, yep. That's what I think I will take from her life, and I think that's the lesson I have learned from a life well lived, as we said. All right, then. Travis. She lived to the ripe old age of 92. Do you think she felt like an adult? Oh, wait, hold on. I got to put you one more thing. Dana Carvey told this story about Barbara Bush after her husband was defeated by Bill Clinton in 1992. Check this out.
We walked into their bedroom, and there's a big wall of televisions.
And on one TV was a close-up of Bill Clinton, the new president. Another TV, there was a picture of Ross Perot. So they're side by side. And she just walks in, looks over, sees the two of them, and goes, I can't figure out which clown to look at.
Oh, my God.
I got, you know what? One more piece of Barbara Bush, only because she did an interview with Larry King back in 1994, and this was another little piece of her attitude that I found to be incredibly valuable when I was going back through his stuff. She really seemed to have appreciated the moment that she was in. Again, something I think a lot of us struggle with, but listen to this.
I looked and the airplane went into the White House and a lot of things happened. The Pope, Arafat met with Rabin. A lot of things happened. And I sat and watched the news. Darling Jessica Tandy died and Hume Cronin. And I thought, you know, I knew every single person or place that was on that television set thanks to George Bush, with the exception of Arafat. And George did meet him this year. But every other person knew me and I knew them.
Quite a life.
That's an amazing life, because I always knew that I was lucky and that life had been good to me, but I really remembered again how really good it had been. I love people. I really loved living in the White House, but I don't miss it at all.
Don't you miss what you love?
No, because I got more. We're having the best time you've ever known.
It's good. A lesson to all of us to try and appreciate the moment, I suppose, is what you would call that. But she was 92 when she died, and by all accounts, still drinking bourbon, still taking her own calls, and still quite the firecracker up until the very last moment. Do you feel like she was a grown-up, Travis?
More of a grown-up than I'll ever be.
Well, here's the thing. Do you think you don't think you're ever going to be a grown-up?
You know, at this point, I kind of have my doubts. I definitely don't think I'll be that much of a grown-up, though. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Well, here's the thing. Experts have narrowed it down and figured out at what age we actually become grown-ups and at what age we start to get old. We'll discuss how old you're going to be when you start feeling old and what the symptoms of aging are. I'll give you one. When you start grunting when you bend down to pick stuff up, when you're like, ah. That's how you know you're getting old. We'll discuss how else you know you're getting old in just a little bit. Thanks for hanging out.
On the mic, you get paid every day, and we're part of the battle. Just bow down, better act like you know.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radio Land. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah.
So, Travis, what's this article in USA Today you were telling me about? Like politically incorrect rock songs or songs that haven't aged well by today's politically correct standards or something of that nature?
It's a list of songs that are not so appropriate when you take a look back at them now. Let me just give you one little example.
Uh-huh.
Ebony and Ivory is on the list.
Hold on. Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder talking about how nice it would be if people got along despite the color of their skin. That's now offensive by today's standards?
Completely offensive.
I mean, I don't remember the lyrics verbatim, so maybe there's something sneakily really, really off color in there that I never noticed when I was a kid first hearing it. But I find it difficult to believe that a song which is so famous for promoting peace and harmony and racial equality is offensive by today's standards. But I'm curious to get into this. Well, let's talk about this a little later on in the show, and I'll tell you about some songs that are truly offensive by today's standards. I'm curious to know if those made it into the article.
Oh.
Let me tell you this. The Rolling Stones are not nice men. Let's just leave it at that.
Oh.
And we'll get into the whys and wherefores later. Right now, that we're talking about Barbara Bush, who made it to the ripe old age of 92 years old and was a pistol till the very end. She was drinking bourbon up to the last minute and taking her own calls, too. She passed away of congestive heart failure and COPD. But it made me think, like, I wonder if she ever fully matured. Do you ever feel like you fully matured, Travis? Do you feel like you're a grown-up now?
No, no, not even close. I don't even know that I qualify as an adult child. Like, ideally, I shouldn't be married. Ideally, I would need like a caretaker. Like, ideally, I would marry a nurse who is not like my wife, but is my nurse.
Dude, this has nothing to do with anything, but you know how Evanescence, you remember Evanescence, when you were working at the Buzz and I was working at the Buzz at the same time. Evanescence were a big band. We had them play a bunch of BuzzFest, things like that. And it was basically a bunch of really angry music. I think I got in trouble once for calling Evanescence PMS set to music on the air, but it was
very accurate.
It was anger and depression set to classical piano and heavy guitar, I think was the best way of summing up Evanescence, and very popular they were too. But I think a big part of the reason why it took Evanescence forever to come out with a new album and why it didn't wind up doing that well is because you know who Amy Lee, the lead singer of Evanescence, married? It's sort of a situation like the one you described.
I'm trying to think who was it?
She married her shrink, which, by the way, for the shrink has to be a tremendous ethical no-no, right? Like, I don't know, hashtag not a doctor, but that doesn't sound okay to me.
No, that's... How in the world do you get involved with the client? I mean, seriously.
I don't know. It could be one of those things, though, where they're married, so therefore it's okay. Like, you hear about these situations where if they're just fooling around, like, what are they thinking? And then if they get married, oh, they got married. That's great. Like, if you hear about two coworkers that are fooling around, you're like, oh, what are they thinking? They've got to disclose it to HR. This is going to be messy. This is going to be terrible. This is going to be, oh, they're engaged. How wonderful. Like, it seems as though if you put a ring on it, it negates all the ethical no-nos of so many relationship faux pas. Does that make sense?
Oh, very true. Absolutely.
But I don't know. I don't know if I can get around the fact that her shrink married her. But I think that's part of the reason why it took Evanescence so long to come out with an album, just because, well, like I said, it was her unhappiness and misery set to music for years and years. Then she has a shrink who she then goes on to marry. So she's got hot and cold running 24-hour-a-day therapy on call whenever she wants it from this guy who married her and knocked her up. And now, like, who wants to listen to an album full of happy, well-adjusted Amy Lee from Evanescence songs? Not many of her original fans. I think that's why it took so freaking long. Anyways, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being a grown-up. You feel as though you're an overgrown man-child that would need a caretaker as opposed to a partner or a wife.
Oh, God, yes.
Well, at what point do you think you started to mature? Was it when you paid your first bill? When you paid, like, what was that first step into adulthood?
Oh, that's tough. I would say my first big boy job.
Which was what? Was that the network administrator thing?
I would say yes, but like, yeah, it was.
You moved out of state for your first job. I think that's kind of a big boy move.
It was.
Like, you moved from Texas to Utah, and how old were you?
I was 18. Yeah, I was fresh out of high school. It's so true, and especially considering that I had never. I mean, I was like, I would never even leave the house. Like, I was always at home with my parents. Like, I would never stay the night with friends. I mean, it was crazy. I was always at home. Like, so
yeah, especially when you head to a wild and crazy place like Utah.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that was probably the first the first indication of any sort of responsibility.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, you realize that you're no longer a child the moment it clicks that your parents aren't perfect. Like when you realize your father might have a gambling problem.
My father had a gambling problem. He lost our house when I was 11, but he didn't come home and say, I lost the house. He came home and said, Mike, how would you like to go camping forever? There's no help for gamblers. There's one sign as you drive into Las Vegas says gambling problem. Please call this number. That's ineffective. It should at least say gambling problem. I bet you won't call this number. Because these people have a gambling problem. Thank you. I was the victim of bad birth order growing up. I was the second born male child. My parents had my brother. They're like, I guess we're having kids. We have a boy. Let's try for a girl. Then they had me. They were like, let's try again. Then they had my sister. They're like, we got it. Our boy and our girl. But now we have this extra kid that we can really roll the dice with, you know? Because my father had a gambling problem. I don't know if I mentioned that. Pretty sure my father...
Mike Vecchione about moving into adulthood by realizing your parents are not necessarily perfect. All right, so the reason I bring all this up is because you start becoming an old person when you're way too young. It's almost disrespectful to actual old people that you're stepping on their gimmick. But according to a new survey, the average age when you start becoming an old person is, what do you suppose it is, Travis?
35.
No, later than that. 41. Yeah.
Okay,
you start getting old at age 41 and you fully make the transition by age 57. So here are the signs that you're becoming old. Let's see how many of these you do. You forget people's names.
Oh, I'm terrible with names. I am.
I've always been bad with names, though, so I feel like that's okay. I don't feel like that's a sign of aging. That's my ADD. You know, I'm feeling stiff.
No. Thank God. I rarely feel stiff.
Like, I started noticing about age. Well, it's tough though, because like, if you know what we want to know, it's really interesting. You know what's a sign of getting old? Double hip replacement surgery, and a 41-year-old buddy of mine just got that done. He's a little older than us. But here's what's interesting about people from our generation, Travis. You know what we did? We saw the Mountain Dew commercials on TV and thought, snowboarding, why, that looks like fun. BMXing, that looks like fun. I bet I could do a backflip on a motorcycle. That also looks like fun. So people of our generation that discovered action sports, I suppose you'd call it, we have a lot more wear and tear on our joints. And this buddy of mine, he was basically just a snowboarding enthusiast, but he's a bigger dude. Most pro snowboarders and pro skateboarders and BMXers, they're sort of like, 5'5" to 5'7". You'll notice that the people that tend to do really well at that sort of thing are folks with low centers of gravity. This dude is probably about 6'3" and I don't know, maybe 250 pounds. Like, he's a big dude. And as a consequence of having been a semi-pro snowboarder, he got double hip replacement surgery a little while ago at age 41 or something like that. So feeling stiff, like, I did all those things. Like, I've jacked up my left ankle so badly so many times on motorcycles and skateboards and doing all sorts of ridiculous stuff. And then, I was in this band where you're hanging upside down from lighting rigs and stage diving every single night. So I think I started encountering aches and pains a little early on in life. But around age 30, I noticed that if I sat down for a long time and got up, it hurt. So interestingly enough, the other sign of getting old is talking a lot about your joints, aches, and pains. So I got a head start on that one too.
Oh God, thank God.
What about groaning when you bend down? That's an old person thing. Like,
no, no. And I'm actually super conscious about this because, like, I hear people do it, and I always think, and I hear people loud breathe. Like, I'll be standing beside somebody younger than me, and they'll be like, and they're not like fat guys. They're just like, they're just loud breathers. And I'm like, oh my God, they don't even realize how loud they are. So I'm like,
I do all of this stuff.
No,
I do all of this stuff. Well, I loud breathe because I've got asthma. Like, what's interesting is I loud breathed and had asthma and couldn't breathe basically the entire time I was growing up in England. In New York, no problems with it. In Texas, horrible allergies, but not asthma. Like, I didn't have whatever the hell it was that triggered my asthma. I would wake up with like a stuffed up nose and really sore eyes and stuff like that. The allergies in Houston are terrible. The moment I got to California to start working, it felt like there was an elephant sitting on my chest. And when I'm in California working, there's like 2 flights of steps to get up to the office area from the studio area. And everybody, like guys 20 years older than me, are taking those stairs in leaps and bounds and watching me get into the elevator going, what the hell's the problem? I'm like, I have really bad asthma. If I walk up that flight of stairs, I'm going to be out of breath. And the only reason I walk up that flight of stairs is because I got to talk to someone. That's the only reason I ever go up to my office, because I got to speak with someone. And I know it'll take me sort of 10, 15 minutes to get my breath back. So I just take the elevator. It's pointless. So I have a head start on all this stuff. I'm a loud breather. I talk about my joints, aches, and pains. I'm stiff when I get up. I forget people's names, but I've always done that. Not knowing popular music. Oh.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
Oh. And that's terrible because I work in radio, but I just... I know.
See, okay, there was a time when I was in a band where I knew every record that was out in every format, and there's a very good chance I understood its chart position. Like, I knew, like, it was my job. I was immersed in it. I knew all this stuff. I knew every single artist. And not so long ago, I'm sitting there watching, like, the Billboard Awards or the Grammys or something like that, and I realized I don't know who any of these people are. And then I realized, perhaps more significantly, I don't care. Like, I realized that, like, in the past, I would have been like, oh no, I've really fallen off. I used to know everything about everything. And then I was like, I don't care about this.
I've never been good at it. I've always been terrible with it. The other thing I'm absolutely horrible with is song lyrics, because I don't, unlike most people, I don't sing. I don't sing in the car. I don't sing in the shower. I don't sing. So I never know the words to songs because I don't pay attention to them. So when people are like, oh, you know the song that kind of goes like this? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't know that song because I don't sing. I don't pay attention to those.
You've got a really good memory for quotes, though. Like, I know Seinfeld, but you know Seinfeld quotes, like, off the top of that. You have a Seinfeld quote that applies to literally everything in life.
I really do.
I'm not going as far as to say that you're a bigger Seinfeld fan than I am, but I will say that your memory for, and also my memory for that stuff's really good too, but you literally have them on instant recall. It's crazy. Other signs of getting old include misplacing your keys and your glasses. Not lifting heavy things because you're worried about your back. Do you worry about your back?
No.
I deadlift, like, in the gym. It's just, I don't have a whole lot of time. So I do, like, these, I bench, I deadlift, and I squat, and that's pretty much it. And as much as I've been deadlifting for a long time, every single time I do it, I'm like, this is the exact opposite of that diagram that tells you how not to lift stuff that's on everything that you lift when you buy. Like, this is contradictory to everything that we've learned. So I do it, but I've always been concerned about it.
Sometimes you just know you're done. You're longing for that shining sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away. Radio. 104.1.
Now, more AD on the radio.
If you are just joining us, we've been talking about when you start becoming old. And apparently, according to a new survey, the average age when you start feeling like an old person and turning into an old person is the age of 41. You make the full transition by age 57. And we were discussing the signs that you're becoming old, like forgetting people's names, feeling stiff. I think our generation, like I said, the Gen X, Y types, we kind of get a pass on the feeling stiff stuff because we all saw those Mountain Dew commercials and thought, like, wow, backflipping a dirt bike seems like a great idea. And as a consequence, we're all messed up. Like, so it's hurt for me to sit down for long periods of time and then stand up ever since I was about 30. It's been a while now, and I don't see it getting any better anytime soon. Groaning when you bend down, that's a big one. And not lifting heavy things because you're worried about your back. I remember that. I remember a guy who was probably about 35 asking me if I could come over and help him carry something. I'm like, why? It's not that big. Why do you need my help? He's like, I got a bad back. And so I guess that's a thing.
The only thing that I do that really makes me feel it kind of makes me feel old, and it kind of doesn't. If I'm going to have to bend down for a long period of time, it kind of hurts my knees. So, like, I'm not going to sit there and bend down, like, because I don't want the stress on my knees. I'm going to sit on the floor. And that includes if I'm, like, at Home Depot. The other day I was at Home Depot looking at something, and it was on the bottom freaking shelf. And I'm like, I bent down for like a few minutes, and I'm like comparing two products on the shelf, and I'm like, you know what? I don't even care. I'm sitting on the floor. So I literally got down on it sat Indian style and compared these two products. And this guy walks by and kind of looks at me, and I thought, keep looking, because I'm not going to stand here and bend down for 5 minutes while I compare these two products.
I just realized, when did it start hurting to sit Indian style? Because like you do that, or I'm sorry, was that politically incorrect? I don't know.
I'm an Indian, and I'm okay with it.
oh, that's right. You're Cherokee.
Yeah, I'm Native American. I have no issue with it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Wow. Look at the litany of jokes we now have access to because of your heritage.
Exactly, right?
You're not as useful as, the black woman that Howard Stern has on his show in Robin Quivers, giving him total joke-telling immunity at all times. But,
I'll get us something. That's all that matters.
Right. Yeah. No. So but like, when did it start hurting to sit cross-legged? Like, when did that become a... Yeah. Like, I realized when I sat cross-legged a little while ago that it hurt. Like, it hurt my ankle or something like that because it was pressing on the floor. And I suppose it always might have hurt, but now I won't do that anymore because I'm like, last time I did that, it hurt. And when you're a kid, you just, you sit however the hell it is you're going to sit, and you don't think about the fact that it's going to hurt when you get up.
So
maybe it did hurt when you got up. The other thing that is apparently a sign of getting older is getting hairier, like hairier eyebrows and more nose hairs and more ear hairs and stuff like that. I'm waiting for that to kick in. When's that supposed to happen?
I'm not sure. I'm kind of proactive on that, so I couldn't tell you if I'm getting hairier. I'm one of those guys that, like, I don't know, I get made fun of. Like, I don't like hair. I shave my arms, I shave my legs, and that probably started like from the whole gym thing, because like all my friends in the gym, shave their arms and legs. So I'm not trying to like justify what I do or anything.
So the buys and tries pop, bro.
Exactly, and I'm fine with being made fun of about it. But I literally, I pluck my eyebrows so I don't have straight eyebrows. I wax the inside of my nose. I hate nose hair. I hate it.
Wax the inside? I could understand hating nose hair. Like, I don't have a ton of nose hair, but what I do have, like, I've got horrible allergies and sneeze and all this sort of stuff. And, like, any hair that you do have in there can lead to all sorts of irritation and stuff. So I could understand wanting to get rid of it. I do not understand how one waxes one's own nasal passages. What the hell are you doing, dude?
It's funny because you asked me a while back if I YouTubed, and I don't YouTube. I really don't. But one of the few videos that I have on YouTube that I put
my God, I think I've seen this disgusting video. It's like where they take Q-tips with like black gunk on them, stick them up their nose, wait 5 minutes, and rip out all the A
friend of mine was asking me how you wax your nose, and this was like, it was when I lived in Puerto Rico, and I was like, oh, you know what? Next time I wax my nose, I'll make a video and I'll show you. So I made a video and I put it up on my YouTube.
Wait, there's a YouTube instructional video of you waxing your nose?
Yeah, it's so stupid.
How many views does it have?
I don't know. Not that many. It's seriously not that good. It's not like
it's not one of the more popular nose hair waxing videos on YouTube.
I'm not trying to get like YouTube famous with it. It's not like, hey YouTube,
like and subscribe.
I'm going to show you. Yeah, like and subscribe. It's nothing like that. It's nothing like that. But yeah, a guy I work with discovered it the other day and sent me a picture on the cell phone of him watching it, and he's like, bro, what is this? I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm like, I have the cleanest nose known to mankind. Okay, that's all you need to know.
Travis, go lightly nose wax.
But I'm telling you.
There it is.
I know. Anyways, I have a friend who's an ear, nose, throat surgeon, and I asked him at one point, because when he was, I went to see him about, I had epiglottitis. I had my epiglottis was inflamed, and I asked him, I said, hey, I wanted to address this with you because he goes, I wanted to tell you your nose is the cleanest nose I've ever seen. I said, I wax my nose hair. And he goes, oh, I wish you wouldn't. I said, I know. I said, is there anything I should be, very concerned about? And he goes, well, if you're going to do it, if you have to do it. He said, then when you finish, I'd like you to take your finger and put some Neosporin on it and put it in your nose. And that way, inflamed follicles or something, you're preventing infection. I said, okay.
This is a disgusting conversation.
It is. I know.
Although I got to tell you, I don't understand why your nose waxing video has. I'm not trying to hate or anything, but you only got 247 views.
I know. Let's keep it that way.
Where there's another guy with 306,000 views on his nose hair waxing video.
He can keep them. I don't want to be YouTube famous. I don't need views on it. It's just one of those things.
I'm going to Seinfeld quote you now. When do you start shaving your ears? When you hear a soft rustle.
It's such a great quote too.
I've yet to hear the soft rustle, so I've done no shaving I've done no ear shaving, but I'm not looking forward to the day I do hear a soft rustle. Then you do really know that you've crossed into old age when you're like, gotta shave my ears. That's there's no turning back after that.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
The last way in which you can tell you're getting old is you start using the expression, back in my day. Have you started saying that yet?
Oh, I have. I don't say back in my day, but I have found myself saying, when I was a kid, or saying, when I learned to do that the way we do it, and then I'll stop and I'll look at the person and I'll say, I would just like to preface by saying that I'm not an old man. It's just that we did things differently when I learned how to do it, and I just want to disclose that. But I feel so old.
I think the only time I feel old is occasionally I just say to myself, I was like, I'd give anything if it was the 90s again.
Yeah.
And it's not because I thought it was such a great time, or, I think now is not a great time, but I just remember how utterly oblivious I was to all the stress that was waiting for me right around the corner. You know what I mean? It's just when you're a young adult, you kind of don't realize that you're going to care about a lot of things and look, anybody that's older than the age of 25 knows exactly what I'm talking about. But there's times where I'm just like, I really wish it was the late 90s again. You know what I mean?
God, yes.
That was easy. That was fun. I didn't worry about a freaking thing. And that was fantastic. And I do find myself thinking, but I think this is not me being old and crotchety. This is me going, there's something different with the music now. And I'll tell you how I know this. I really feel as though if you were a kid in the 90s growing up listening to a lot of, I suppose, 90s bands, you were really around for something tremendously special that hasn't been repeated since. And I know why. This is how I know it hasn't been repeated since, because we're still listening to all those same bands. As a guy that programs a radio station, I wonder about this all the time, because when we were kids in the late 90s and early 2000s, Travis, music from 20 years ago, from the 70s and 80s, we might have liked it, but that was our parents' music. We liked Led Zeppelin. We liked the Beatles. We liked the Doors. We liked Jimi Hendrix. We liked all that music, but it wasn't our music. It was our parents' music. And we had our own thing, and there was so much going on. There was so much going on that had not been done before, I think, in music in the 90s. A band like Rage Against the Machine straight up hadn't ever existed before, and that was really exciting to be around. There were barriers being broken down, and preconceived notions of what was okay to do in music being challenged all the time. And now, I'll never forget this. I went to see Soundgarden. I'm very glad that I did, because it was one of the last shows that Soundgarden did before Chris Cornell passed away. But I went to see Soundgarden, and I'll never forget, the people I'm sitting next to were a mother and daughter. And the mom was probably in her mid-40s. The daughter was late teens, early 20s. And this music meant everything to all of them. And it's very strange how Green Day, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Nine Inch Nails, Tool, Soundgarden, bands like this mean just as much now to a 16-year-old as they did to their parents when they were 16. And that's an interesting thing. And that makes me go, man, I really feel like people who weren't kids when all this was happening really missed out on something very, very special, and missed out on something very special that hasn't been repeated since. And I know there's going to be folks that go like, you don't understand how great this band is, and you don't understand, the significance of EDM and all this sort of stuff. But I just don't feel like these bands would have stayed the course. I don't feel like Green Day would have been such a big deal still, 25 years later. I don't feel like Nirvana records would have been such a big deal still 25 years later if something else of equal weight, importance, and significance that was just as much of a game changer had come along. And that game-changing moment where it was night and then all of a sudden it was day, I don't think kids have had that since. And so for that reason, sometimes I do look back at the 90s and go, we were really lucky to have been young during that time, just old enough to, I suppose, enjoy it and, sort of like appreciate what was going on around us. Do I sound like an old fart, or does that make sense? Hey, why can't you be both? Why can't you be an old fart that makes sense occasionally?
It makes a lot of sense. It's just funny to think back, because you hit the nail on the head. But it's funny to think about how magical the 90s were, especially when you think back about what a circus music in the 80s was.
Right. Well, I think that's the thing. There was that overnight thing, and like I think he passed away, but the lead singer of Warrant will tell you he realized his career was over when he walked into his record label's office, and there used to be a giant poster of his band up on the wall, and that poster wasn't there anymore. It had been replaced with an Alice in Chains poster. He's like, well, I guess we're done. So, I mean, and that was the thing, Smells Like Teen Spirit came out. The first Rage Against the Machine album came out. The first Pearl Jam album came out, and it changed everything. Like I said, it was night and all of a sudden it was day. And that radical, impactful, monumental paradigm shift that happened back then hasn't happened since. And to have been around when it did happen was a really, really cool thing. I think the other thing, like I said, that makes me yearn for a bit of a simpler time is, man, money. Money's a weird thing. Like, are you making more money now than you have in the past? Are you at your sort of like fiscal peak?
No. And the reason that I'm not, it's been a choice thing. I literally, because of the fact that I career collect, I've left jobs making far more money for jobs making almost no money, just because in order to collect the next career, I had to start at the bottom.
You were an air traffic controller. I don't know exactly what you folks make when you air traffic control, but I've heard it's pretty substantial.
Oh yeah, right around. I was making right around 100,000. So I mean, it wasn't bad money whatsoever, not at all. And then left that, and ended up taking a job making far less money. But it was necessary, to move away from air traffic and move to the next career. But the thing that's funny is, because I'm not chasing money, and because I've intentionally, left jobs for less money, intentionally just because I want the job, it's weird. Like, I've found that
Are you happier making less money?
Not happier making less money, but I've found that I'm not so much happier making more money.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of fascinating stuff, because I felt like I had way more when I had less. Now I've got more. And by the way, I'm not balling or anything, but I'm realistic about the fact that I'm earning more money than I did in the past. And now I just stress about money all the time, all the freaking time. Whereas when I was making less, I didn't give it a thought, And a big part of that, though, I got to tell you, is California taxes. But even when I was in New York City, where, you know, taxes are crazy and cost of living is crazy, I didn't stress about money when I had less of it. It's very interesting. Once again, the notorious B.I.G. is a prophet who was way ahead of his time. Mo money does in fact mean mo problems. And what you're talking about segs very interestingly into this. Oh, by the way, on a related note, the jury is still out on whether or not, in fact, it was all just a dream. Anyways, according to a new study, the higher your salary, the more stressed out you are. 68% of people making over $200,000 a year have tremendously high levels of stress versus less than half of that who are making under $100,000. So the actual measurable levels of stress in people that make over $200,000 a year are way higher than people that make less than $100,000, which is just so contradictory to what you, I think, instinctively believe. Like, if you've got more money, you've got more abilities to take care of the things that you need to take care of and less stress. And I think, I don't know, people fall into a trap. I don't think I have of you know, living to the hilt of my means. You know, I drive a reasonably inexpensive car. I don't live in a place that's all that ostentatious or anything like that. But I think a lot of people, they start making more money and they feel like they should drive the nicer car. They should live in the nicer place. And I understand how that would make the stress pile up. But the study also found that the sweet spot is making between $50,000 and $75,000 a year. People that make between $50,000 and $75,000 have the lowest levels of stress and the highest job satisfaction. And apparently that's just enough to where you can pay your bills and have a little left over afterwards to have a little bit of fun. So if you make over 200, you're going to be miserable and stressed out and pre-hypertension. If you make between 50 and 75, you're going to be easy breezy and all sorts of chill, which I got to tell you, the numbers are different in my case when I'm thinking about this. When I was broke, I was really, 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 really broke, but I just didn't think about money in the same way I did. It's a strange thing how that works, right, Travis?
It is weird. It is. I tried to figure it out for a long time. I thought, you know, was I happier when I had less money? And I'm like, well, I don't think I was necessarily happier, but I don't think I was any happier when I had more money. So it was, I don't think when I had more money that I ever felt like I had more money. It was just, it was weird, man.
I remember thinking very clearly at one point in my life, not that long ago, that if I made $50,000, that would be it for me. Because I'd read somewhere $50,000 was enough. Like, and especially if you're living in Texas, which I was at the time. Like, if you're, it's interesting because if you're making $50,000 in Houston, Texas, in many other parts of the world, that's like making $200 a year, just in terms of the way you're able to live. Exactly. You know, it's just, people don't necessarily understand how easy breezy it can be. Like, it's interesting because like other parts of the world I've found have much higher levels of ambition in them. You know, like people in New York, man, I'm going to make it. I'm going to rise up from nothing. I'm going to rule the freaking world. And when I moved to Texas, people like, I'm a waiter. I'm pretty happy. I live in this really nice place. It's got a gym and a pool and it's new and it's clean and I like it. And I go out a lot. You know, it's just like, I mean, this was when I moved. So like folks were younger at the time. And, you know, as I guess you get older and maybe you have a family and you have kids, things start to change a little bit. You know what, this has become like a bit of a personal therapy session on the air around financial health and happiness. But I got to tell you, I am cursed with ambition. And I think where I started going wrong with this stuff, right? I think where I started going wrong with this stuff was thinking, I'm here now and I'm happy and I'm fine now and I can afford my stuff. I don't live outside my means. I don't have anything fancy or ostentatious or anything of that nature. All my clothes come from Old Navy. I like sneakers and Mets t-shirts and shorts and that's it. Like I don't have expensive taste whatsoever. But what I do have in the back of my mind, eating away at it, that is making me unhappy with the amount of money that I make is the desire to know that should something happen, should I all of a sudden wind up with a kid, should I have to take care of my mom or my dad or my sister, or should somebody need something from me, I would like to know that I can look after it no matter what. And I think I think that's what has me so financially dissatisfied in general. I'm cursed with ambition, and I'm cursed with a desire to be able to look after problems I don't even have yet. What the hell? Can open, worms everywhere. I think it's, oh my, what did I just say, Travis? I'm cursed with the desire to be able to look after problems I don't even have yet.
I think you're getting old. I think you're aging.
I think that happened a long time ago. I think I'm long overdue for a trip back to the old shrink. All right, then. Well, I'm going to go try and make sense of this. Usually this show is informative. Today, I feel like I've confused myself, but probably made things a lot more clear for you.